At her mother's funeral, Lena heard the word God 4 times before noon. Her aunt held both of her hands and said, God called her home. Her younger brother stepped away and whispered, do not tell me this was God's plan. A family friend promised that God would give them strength. Later, when the room had emptied, the chaplain sat beside Lena and said, you are allowed to be angry with God. The same word had become an explanation, an accusation, a source of comfort, and someone who could receive anger. But were all 4 people talking about the same thing? That question is easy to miss because the word God feels familiar. It appears in prayers, arguments, songs, laws, promises, childhood memories, and final goodbyes. Familiarity creates the impression that everyone already knows what it means. Then one person says, I believe in God. Another says, I do not. And the debate begins before either person has identified what is being affirmed or denied. So before asking whether God exists, there is a quieter question. What do we mean when we say God? For some people, God is a person, not a human person, but a conscious agent who knows, chooses, loves, commands, responds, and can be addressed as you. Prayer, in this picture, is relational. Gratitude has a recipient. Anger has a listener. Providence means that events may be guided by intention. For others, God is not only personal but maximally perfect, all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly good, the creator and sustaining source of everything else. Philosophers call important versions of this picture classical theism. But even thinkers who share that label disagree. Is God inside time or beyond it? Does God change in response to suffering? Can the world affect God? Does divine knowledge determine what happens, or can creatures be genuinely free? One word does not erase those differences. Another person may use God to mean the ground of being, not one being among other beings, even the largest one, but the depth or condition by which anything exists at all. In that vocabulary, asking where God is can sound like asking where existence is located. God is not imagined as an invisible object somewhere beyond the clouds. The word points toward the mystery that there is something rather than nothing, and that finite things participate in a reality they did not create. But this definition changes the conversation. A ground of being is not automatically a person who answers prayer, issues commands, or intervenes in history. Those claims would need another step. The language may preserve transcendence while losing the relationship many believers mean when they say, God heard me. Then there are views about God and the world. Pantheistic views identify God with the whole of reality in some sense. Pantheistic views say the world is in God, while God is more than the world. Classical theism usually preserves a stronger distinction between creator and creation. These are not decorative differences. They change what divine action could mean. Is God acting upon a world that is distinct from God? Through a world that exists within God? Or as the unfolding life of reality itself? And some traditions insist that every positive definition eventually fails. If God is infinite, timeless, or beyond ordinary categories, then words learned from finite life may not apply in their everyday sense. When we call God good, do we mean good in the way a good parent is good? Exactly the same, completely different? Or similar by analogy, while exceeding what the word can hold? This is not merely a puzzle for theologians. It changes what people expect from the divine, especially when life becomes painful. At the funeral, Lena's brother was not objecting to an abstract ground of being. He was protesting a God who could have prevented their mother's suffering, knew what was happening, loved her, and chose not to stop it. The force of his question came from the attributes inside his definition. If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and perfectly good, suffering creates a profound philosophical and spiritual problem. If God is powerful but not controlling, the problem changes. If God is the ground of being rather than a personal agent, it changes again. If God is identical with nature, asking why God allowed a storm may import agency into a definition that does not include it. None of this makes suffering less real. Clarifying a concept is not a way to explain away a hospital room, a war, an abused child, or a grief that divides life into before and after. It is a way to stop giving easy answers to questions we have not defined carefully enough. And this is where the word God becomes personal in another sense. Long before most people study theology, they form an image. God may resemble the parent who watched closely, the authority who punished, the grandmother who protected, the silence that followed a prayer, or the presence felt during a moment of awe. A person can reject a doctrine intellectually and still react emotionally to the God image learned in childhood. The philosopher Ludwig Feuerbach argued that human beings project their own ideals, needs, hopes, fears, and longing for freedom onto a divine figure. On his account, theology often reveals anthropology. When people describe God, they may be describing an enlarged image of what humanity values or wishes to become. That critique matters. But it does not finish the argument. Explaining why a belief is psychologically attractive is not the same as proving its object unreal. Hunger can explain why someone is thinking about food. It does not prove there is no food. Fear can shape a person's idea of danger. It does not prove every danger imaginary. The origin of a God image deserves examination. But origin and truth are different questions. The opposite mistake is just as tempting. A feeling of presence, unity, rescue, or surrender may transform a life. That transformation is real as an event in the person's experience. It still does not make the first metaphysical explanation automatically binding on everyone else. William James studied religion at this live level, what people experience, how they respond, and what changes afterward. This shifts attention from winning a definition to examining its fruits. Does a belief make someone more honest, compassionate, courageous, and able to face reality, or more frightened, dependent, grandiose, and willing to excuse harm? Good fruit does not prove that every claim attached to a belief is true. Harmful fruit does not settle every metaphysical question. But fruit matters because definitions of God do not remain in dictionaries. They enter families, institutions, politics, bodies, and private decisions. Julian Johnson offers a different answer within the Sant-Mat framework of the Path of the Masters. He treats names for God as pointers rather than containers. He argues that speculation and inherited belief are insufficient, and that genuine knowledge of ultimate reality must come through direct inner realization under a living path, practice. He also describes a supreme being and a hierarchy of spiritual regions and powers. That is Johnson's theological map. It should not be smuggled into the conversation as a neutral definition, public evidence, or a conclusion shared by all mystical traditions. His emphasis on experience raises the same question we met in the last episode. An experience may be deeply meaningful while its interpretation remains open to examination. Still, one part of his approach is useful even outside his doctrine. The name is not the reality. Saying the word God can create the feeling of contact while leaving the referent unclear. So here is a 5-question audit for the next time the word appears in a sermon, argument, book, memory, or private prayer. First, what kind of reality is being named? A conscious person? A perfect creator? The ground of being? The universe? A reality that contains the universe? A symbol of ultimate value? Something said to exceed every category? Second, what attributes are included? Does this God know particular lives, answer prayer, control events, suffer with creation, judge actions, change, remain timeless, or act at all? Do not let a speaker borrow one attribute for comfort and quietly abandon it when a difficult question appears. Third, what role is the concept playing? Is God being offered as an explanation, a relationship, a moral authority, a source of meaning, a name for mystery, or a way to close discussion? The same sentence can perform several roles, and those roles should not be confused with evidence. Fourth, what could revise the understanding? If no experience, argument, contradiction, or moral consequence could ever change the concept, then it may function as an absolute commitment rather than an examined conclusion. That does not automatically make it false. It does mean the kind of claim should be named honestly. Fifth, what happens to human beings under this image of God? Are questions permitted? Is grief allowed to remain grief? Does the belief protect dignity, responsibility, compassion, and repair? Or does it excuse domination, silence pain, demand dependence, or make one person the unquestionable interpreter of divine will? After the funeral, Lena returned to the room where her mother had died. The chaplain's question remained with her. Who are you angry with when you say God? Lena did not find an answer that afternoon. She found a definition she could begin examining. She was angry with the one she had been taught could intervene, the one who knew, the one who loved, and the one who had remained silent. Naming that image did not settle whether God existed. It showed her which God she was grieving, resisting and still trying to address. Sometimes the first honest spiritual sentence is not I believe or I do not believe. Sometimes it is, when I say God, this is what I mean. Write that sentence without using the word God a second time. Describe the reality, the attributes, the relationship, and the expectations hidden inside the name. Then ask, is this the idea you chose, the image you inherited, the presence you experienced, or the question you are still learning how to hold?